Hello developers, writers, and everyone who loves game design.
Welcome to DLC Not Included, our weekly podcast where we discuss game development, the industry, and everything in between.
We are your hosts, Steele
and Teal. Glad you can join us.
And we are glad you could join us. We started up our season 2 of our podcast last weekend, talking about the user experience.
Right.
And it was met with a lot of thank you. I don't want to say acclaim because that would insinuate that there's a massively large audience. But the people who listened to it were very thankful.
Yes, and we're still getting good feedback on that. So thank you guys so much.
Yes, we really appreciate it. For those of you who were wanting to listen to this on Discord, we did encounter a technical issue pretty much right before we went live.
Yeah, so we had to kill that, unfortunately.
So we'll be working on that so that y'all can get your simulcast on Discord as well. But anyway, what are we going to talk about today, Teal?
Today's topic is understanding story beats.
All right. Specifically, of course, we're talking about story beats in game narrative.
Right.
This is not going to be a podcast on how to write like certain scenes and sequences and chapters within your story, so much as it's going to be like how to measure out when to present a piece of information.
And also, this also pertains mainly to game development, as in when the viewer is interacting with the game,
right,
instead of just reading or watching a cutscene.
While you could take what we teach you today, what we talk about, and apply it to a book or a film or an animation, this primarily requires a level of interactivity. Now, the reason that we're giving all these caveats is because writing is not a science.
No.
There is a science to doing this kind of stuff, and you can mathematically break down when is a good time based on algorithms, but it comes down to feeling as a writer when and how to write.
It's an art.
It's an art. So we're going to go over more the science side today, but please understand there is an art to writing that is well beyond the scope of this podcast today.
So let's jump into this by defining game narrative in story beats.
Right.
And why they're important.
Yeah, because you got to have these two understandings. When we're talking about what a game narrative is in relation to this topic, you need to know what that is, and, as well as a story beat. So go ahead, you want to start with game narrative?
Okay, so game narrative is the flow of your story during the course of your game, from start to finish.
So basically everything from when the player starts the game to when the final post-credit scene rolls.
Yep.
That's your game narrative. Now, there's other definitions out there. That's what we're using in relation to this particular topic.
Exactly.
Now, a story beat is going to be a little bit different. That's more like a drop of plot or character development, some sort of drop of something at a singular point during your game's narrative. Right.
So the story beat is contained in the narrative.
Right. Several story beats, usually hundreds, thousands, a lot. Many.
There's going to be many story beats.
A plethora of story beats will be within your story. What is it, Teal? Because we of course do research to all these podcasts ahead of time. Yeah. And we kind of came up with a short list. Yes. Short list of what players need information on during their game that these story beats can be a part of.
Okay, so first and foremost, plot information.
Right.
Your players need to know what they're doing and why they're doing it.
It's not just enough to say, here's a sword, go kill the evil dragon. They need to know why they're killing the evil dragon. Even if your game is like very murky, like the Souls games, there's still an impetus for your character to do what they're doing, even if a lot of the what's going on and why is very subjective.
Yeah, and to build on your example, what sword? Why this particular sword?
Is it because you need to use whatever tools you have at your disposal to kill the big bad, or the big bad can only be harmed by this particular tool? In other words, you need to have impetus. And that's what plot information is impetus to do whatever it is the game wants you to do. What else?
Okay, so let's talk about character information. Okay, who is doing what and why?
Because again, even if it's a game that has a murky subjective storyline, people still do things.
Yeah, so using your hero example of the killing the dragon, who is this guy?
Right.
Okay, why him?
Right. Why is the guy in the cave giving you the sword to go fight the bad guys? You know, different things like that. There needs to be that kind of information. Then we have, what else? World information.
World information, very important. Right. What are the consequences of what the character's doing?
Success, failure,
Success or failure. Right. Who is affected by all this?
Is what your character or what the main character doing just going to affect a small region, a town, a country, a world, a metaverse?
Yeah.
Everything. So the more you have that scope, that's how when you're dropping your story beats. Are you dropping your story beats? Hey, if you don't kill this dragon, it's going to eat the world.
Yeah.
Hi, Alduin. All right.
Also, there can be more. Okay. Right. Besides just plot, character, and world information, these players also need to know about lore changes.
Right. Story beats can include lore changes, like in Dragon Age, where you think that the elven gods are the gods, and then you find out actually they're the powerful wizards that kind of messed up the fate.
Exactly. It could also be meta story.
Right.
Like the Horcruxes in the Harry Potter stories.
Right. And again, not a game, but it's a good example of a meta story. You learn through these story beats about the Horcruxes, which is what Harry needs to kill himself of Voldemort.
Right.
So the reason that we're giving you all of that is so that you understand your story beats aren't just where your character has to go next and why. Too often, game designers try to only have their story beats be what the character has to do next.
Yeah.
And that is doing a disservice for yourself.
Well, sure it is. It's not very interesting.
Right.
On the long haul.
If all you as a game writer and a game developer ever put down is to where the next objective is, then that's all the player's ever going to feel and experience.
Yeah.
And unless you're putting in like god tier level environmental storytelling, the game is going to feel exceptionally flat. So you got to have this little story beats, things coming out. But there's some easy mistakes to make.
Yes. You can have too little or too much story beat at each point.
Yeah.
Okay. So
too much information, too little information.
So too little information, it feels very underwhelming.
Right. Like if you go through this long trek just to learn that, the dragon has red scales.
Yeah.
And that better be the most relevant goddamn thing in the world. It better be the fact that you just spent 4 hours of game time to find out that your dragon has red scales. That better be like the key to defeating it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's underwhelming.
Yeah. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you can have too much information, and we call this info dump.
And do not be info dump.
Oh, please don't.
Do not be info dump. Now, there's also some dangerous mistakes that can be made when you mess this up. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to catch up and recover, or trying to make up and extend. And a lot of this can be fixed simply by just following writing and revision best practices.
Sure.
But here are the two dangers that we've seen throughout the years.
Yeah.
When someone realizes that they're messing up a story beat and tries to fix it while they're designing. Don't do that.
The first one is catch up.
Right.
And what we mean by that is these by the way moments.
Right. Where you have
I've seen that too many times.
A well-written scene, but then you realize as you've written this well-written scene, there was a piece of information you should have given the player 4 hours ago.
Yeah.
So, so in this really good, well-written, tight scene, suddenly you spoil it with, by the way.
Ugh.
By the way, in case you were wondering, that thing you did back there is relevant because of this. Don't do that.
Ooh, don't do that.
And also makeups.
Yeah.
If you find that you've written yourself into a corner, game writer, don't try to write yourself out of it on the fly.
No, don't.
Go back, re-examine your notes, revise your scenes, revise your game script, etc., 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 and fix it that way, because catching up looks like you're literally pulling a by the way.
Yeah.
Which sounds very lazy.
Yeah.
And when you're doing a makeup, it sounds like you're making it up on the go by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
And that also can make you look kind of
sloppy.
amateurish. Yeah.
Yeah, very sloppy.
So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork down, let's talk about the techniques of creating your story beats.
Yeah.
And the first one is going to be, it's really two major sections.
Yeah.
And the first section is going to be called dividing your game script, which is the first section. And then the second one is actually choosing those moments. But when we say dividing your game script, we're not talking about your dialogue script, are we, Teal?
No. Game script is simply, how does your story unfold?
Right.
It's not a dialogue script.
Right.
It's
literally, it's your game's script. So it would be like, the game's script. You wake up being unconscious inside of a wagon, and there's you're with the other Stormcloaks. You go to Helgen, Alduin attacks.
You escape.
You free, right, and eventually you get to Whiterun, and a dragon attacks a tower. You kill the dragon, you absorb the soul, Fushorda. That's a game script.
Yes, it is.
The dialogue script would be the things the actual characters say. We're not talking about the dialogue script.
We're talking about the game script.
Right. But like any script.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Like any script, you want to start dividing things.
Yes.
And you want to start by dividing chapters. So you want to have your game script have chapters. Well, how do you do that?
So you define your chapters by major events.
Right. Just like if you were writing a book, your chapter would be a overarching scene or sequence of scenes that have a major something happen. That's a chapter in a book.
Yeah.
So a chapter in a game script is a major event, like let's say a town being attacked.
Yeah.
The bad guy being revealed. The good guy betrayed by his closest ally. The evil demon tower rising from the ocean.
Or a meteor is summoned.
Yes, we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
But those are major events. Now, we don't have to be massively melodramatic here. We did pick up some pretty big stuff.
Sure.
Like on a world level here, but it could be like the town being attacked is a good example.
Yeah, that's a major event as well.
Another major event would be getting the intel from a spy that the town is going to be attacked.
Yeah.
So chapter 2 would be getting that intel and finding out, holy crap, this town's about to get sacked. Well, chapter 3 would be the actual
sacking of the town.
Exactly. So what is the space between those events? You need to think about that while you're looking at your game script.
This is very important for your story beats.
You're going to go back sometimes after you divide your game script and divide it again, or combine some of those divisions, etc. You're going to be modifying all of that when you look at your story beats.
Yeah, this touches upon pacing.
Right.
And we talk a lot about pacing your story in our reviews.
Right. You got to kind of touch and feel your way through this whole process, not just go, okay, I now have 10 chapters and 100 story beats, I'm ready to go. You're going to be modifying as you go along.
Yeah, and this is where the art comes in.
Right.
As an artist, I say in air quotes, you do have to feel your way through the entire script and the narrative that you're trying to tell.
There's a lot of writing that ends up being gut instinct. And when we talk about what we just talked about, part of that is your gut instinct as your writer.
Yeah.
We're just going to give you that foundation of skills. Okay, so now that you have your chapters, your major events.
Yeah, now that you have major events, let's go ahead and break those chapters into sections by minor events.
Right. Now, a minor event, again, can be rather subjective.
Yeah.
But a minor event could be something like a new good guy arrives, a new person shows up in town. The hero and the love interest share their first kiss. The auxiliary party returns after a successful raid against the bad guys. The whole party comes back together after a very long separation.
Aerith is buried. Woo!
Sorry, that was a minor event. So minor, and yet so important.
Yeah.
Minor event only means minor in terms of duration and scope, not in terms of story impact. So again, you got to think of the space between those events.
And think about, why does the minor event even occur?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Why have it in there?
Right. If you, as the game writer, have written a very solid game script, those questions are already answered.
Exactly.
But to be fair to you guys, this is assuming your game script is written, solid, and ready to go. Okay, so you know your chapters, you know your sections, you know all this nebulous, big divisions, small subdivisions, etc. You've taken all of this word salad we've thrown at you and actually turned it into some proper division of your game script.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you want to put your game script to the side, and you want to get your different stories. And by stories, we mean things along the lines of your main story, your faction stories, your main side stories, your character stories, your world stories, etc., ad nauseum. And these pieces, okay, so these pieces that you're going to divide these stories into, how big they are, how many they are, they're very subjective.
Yes, they are.
Really subjective. Again, I mean, I can sit here and spout a whole bunch of verbiage at you guys, on how I would do it, but the fact is, at some point, you as the writer have to feel your way through that. So if you have your story, your main quest being the hero wakes up in his village after it's been burnt to the ground. The hero, ends up going through the hero quest, the hero journey, all the way through, including finding true love, being betrayed by his best friend, finally getting the super weapon, and killing the big bad.
Right.
If that's your story, if that's your main quest, you as the writer have to kind of find out which one of where, what's the beat, what's the first piece, what's the first piece. The first piece in this example would be like waking up with the village destroyed, escaping the bad guy, or whatever it is that's trying to kill him. The next piece would be like wandering through the wilderness. Then the next piece would be coming across the starter town. Then the next piece would be, meeting with the good knight who happened to have a squire out in that town that got destroyed. Things like that. That would be your pieces, okay? There are good ways to do this, okay? If you have more pieces, a plethora of
pieces. Yeah, more pieces at a smaller size give you slower reveals.
Right. So if you have like 100 pieces and each piece gives just a little tidbit of information here and there, it's a slower reveal.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's good.
It's a good ride. On the flip side, less pieces with larger amounts of information give you sensational reveals.
Which is also okay.
Yeah.
Because again, this is the art form. You as the writer have to determine at what point am I going to take this really big chunk of information and slap the player in the face with it? And is that going to have a better impact than taking that big chunk, dividing it into 3 smaller chunks, and giving it to them over time?
A good example of a sensational reveal would be the best friend betrayal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You have what we call you have a few breadcrumbs.
Right.
Which is less pieces.
Right.
But the breadcrumbs, when taken together, they're a larger size and they give you a more sensational reveal.
So a good way to do that, if we're going to go ahead and go off of that example, would be, let's say that the reason that the best friend betrays is because the best friend always felt like they were in the hero's shadow.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
Up to and including having feelings for the hero's, crush.
Yeah.
And, just feeling inadequate.
Right.
In every way. Maybe it's like the younger brother or something. Just pick a relationship. But the breadcrumbs, the smaller pieces, that would be the slower reveal, would be the hero, finding out that his childhood crush knew that his best friend had feelings. Finding out the best friend had feelings for the childhood crush. Another little breadcrumb would be the hero finding out that, the person who was giving admiration to them, maybe it was like their mentor or whatever, preferred him over the best friend. Those are tiny little things. Like maybe it might be a letter that the hero finds from the mentor in the starter village that got burnt. And the mentor is writing to one of his associates in a town. Saying, I have these great apprentices, but this guy, hero, he's awesome. And, while best friend is good, he's got a lot to go on. And I feel that sometimes he's not living up to his potential, so it gives the player a clue that there's something else going on there. Those are all those little pieces, those little breadcrumbs.
Yeah, those are small pieces.
But then when you have the actual betrayal, that's a large chunk where the best friend then, monologues a bit, gives the whole, I've always lived in your shadow.
Yeah.
You never realized just how much I was suffering standing there, while you blocked all of the light.
Yeah.
So you got little pieces, slow reveal, and then you got, boom, the big, huge, sensational reveal. So to kind of bring it all back home, when you're dividing up your story into these little story pieces, you need to keep that in mind. You need to actively look at where the impact is.
Yeah. What impact are you trying to make?
Are you trying to give them that slow burn so that it creeps up on them and then give them just enough that when you hit them with that boulder, it shocks the hell out of them? Or do you want to have it be that slow burn the entire way that they start to realize that with horror, this is what's really going on?
Yeah.
Now, there's some ways to screw this up. Don't go with lesser pieces, smaller size the entire way. Don't go with like 10 pieces of little tidbits here and that's not enough information.
That's not enough info.
And also, don't go with massive amounts of information of huge import over and over and over again.
Because at that point, you're over sensationalizing whatever it is.
And that desensitizes your players.
Yep.
The more that the players are constantly getting hit with, oh, this big thing, this big thing, oh, after a while, it loses its impact.
It does. Yeah.
All right. So, your divisions, you want to have those divisions. You want to have those story beat moments, and you want to do this with every single part of your story.
Right. You want to do it with your main plot, with your subplots, with your character journeys, with environmental storytelling,
etc.
You have to do that.
So these are your story pieces. So all that stuff we just talked about is, when it comes down to one simple statement, is divide each one of your stories into the digestible chunks you feel are going to have the strongest, most sustainable impact on your player.
Yeah.
Okay. And then once you've done all of that malarkey.
Yep. Now here's really what we're talking about with pacing. You want to choose your moments for the beats. You need to test those moments and then refine those moments. So choose, test, refine.
Right. Choose, test, refine. And we're going to, again, give the caveat that a lot of this is you touching and feeling your way through your story. Again, we're giving you a science. We're giving you a math behind it, but ultimately you as the writer have got to feel your way through.
Yeah.
For example, let's kind of go through the beginning of this.
Sure.
So, with those divisions and those story beat moments, those pieces, with all of that defined, you want to go through each moment that you've written down. That's each moment where you're like, a piece of information has to come out here. So let's say it's when the hero is sitting in the tavern drinking an ale.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a moment. And you want to put what kind of fraction of that story piece you need to insert into there. So let's say that, you've written down everything. You have this massive division of your story and all your story pieces laid out into your breadcrumbs and massive boulder of reveals. And you're following along your main plot. And when the hero gets to the tavern, okay, the next thing the hero needs to learn is that the raiders are coming.
Yeah.
But no one else knows.
No one else knows.
So in the tavern, you could have him overhear a piece of dialogue. Here's one of your little crumbs. And that dialogue could be, hey, when I was coming down the road the other day, I noticed an overturned cart. It was some trader, and they's all dead.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a crumb. Have the hero remark internally on it. Okay, so that might be something. So then when the hero goes for a walk later to go do a thing, maybe to go talk to an NPC or to check up on one of his friends.
Right. Or to go shopping, whatever.
To go shopping. Then you could see that the empty stall where the trader used to be. There's your next crumb.
There it is,
There's your next crumb. Okay. And then the hero in his head goes, okay, maybe I can, maybe this is something important.
Yeah.
The player's going to think that too. Then the stall next to them, there's a trader. They talk to that trader, and here's your next crumb where they find out, where the lost trader was coming from, where on the road they usually traveled, their
because
route.
That was his coworker, so he's going to know a little bit about his coworker's business. So he's going to say, well, he was coming from this other town. So
you've given, a beat. You've given us a little bit. Then you could have the next piece where, okay, the hero says they're going to go accept the side quest, and they're going to go in that direction.
Yeah.
And they go down, and they go to where the
overturned cart.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And they explore it a bit, and they find like an arrow that's not normal for this type of area. Maybe it's like a goblin arrow or something. And that's another crumb. And then the hero sees it's coming from a certain direction. The hero goes there, and that's when the hero comes across the raider camp and finds out the raiders, goblet raiders, are getting ready to sack and destroy the entire town. And that's your big punch.
There you go.
So you did, a small piece, following logically each of those moments. Moment 1 in the tavern, moment 2 shopping, moment 3 talking to the associate, moment 4 looking at the cart, moment 5 finding the camp.
Yeah.
But the crumbs, the little beats, were not all big, not all little.
Yeah.
They were little, big. That's kind of the science actually behind it.
Yeah.
The rest is you feeling your way through it. And I know we got a little bit off course Teal's looking at me like, you got a little bit off course of our notes, but we did. But
it's okay.
But I find that this kind of example is a really good.
It is. It's a good example. And I just want to point out that these beats, they don't have to be in a cutscene, and they don't have to be cinematic.
Right.
As Steele pointed out, they can happen during your gameplay.
You can have them happen during a fight.
Yeah.
You know, some of the best character development that I saw in Final Fantasy VII Remake, still to this day, one of my new favorite RPGs, happens during some of the boss fights.
Yes.
The Airbuster boss fight has character development where you find out just the low depths that Heidegger and the Shinra Corporation will go in. You're learning about the Genova as you go through the Genova Dreamweaver fight. Hell, the last fight between Cloud and Sephiroth after you technically win the final battle has got character. There's character development in moments where your character picks up an item.
Yeah.
And maybe the description on that item holds lore. The Dark Souls games are huge for that.
Yeah, they do that.
Where like you actually will have an item and the item lore gives you world lore. So like Teal said, it doesn't have to be cinema.
No. It doesn't have to be.
Don't restrict yourself. Don't restrict yourself.
Don't restrict yourself.
Any other examples you want to come up with, or you think we can move on to the next
I think we
point?
can move on.
Yeah.
We came up with a really good, solid example with that.
So after you've written, start revising.
Yep, revise. And guys, that is the bulk of your work.
Yes.
Revision.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to get in there with your red ink pen and / move around, etc.
Roll up your sleeves and get ready to work. Because you're going to look back and you're going to revise each one of those moments.
Yeah.
What's a good way to do that?
Well, just ask yourself, how much does this story piece tell the player about the overall part of that story?
Yeah. In other words, that little crumb you just gave them, what does that give them?
Yeah. What does it give them?
Are they getting just an objective? And is that all you want to give them? Or is that giving them the objective and a little bit of the world?
Yeah.
And the trader raider thing that I just mentioned, you can actually insert into there, and you can kind of see how it was done, where you're putting in how the merchants work.
Yeah, see, that's a little bit of a world lore there.
You know, when you're talking to the associate in beat number 3, maybe the dialogue from that associate is letting you know how the traders in this country have their trade routes.
Yeah.
That's world lore. You've given out more than just your objective. Maybe when you're having story beat 4, where he finds the overturned cart, you describe not only the type of wares and how they're a mixture from different lands, but the arrow itself.
Yep.
You know, that gives you some lore that the arrows are different. It's not just arrows. It's this arrow is made by a goblin.
Yeah.
This arrow here is made by a human, etc., etc., etc. So when you're doing your revising, ask that question. Yeah.
And, you know, when you're doing your revising, ask yourself, and this is like a bad example.
Right.
Does this moment, does this crumb give away too much too quickly?
I've seen this really in a lot of, I hate to use the term amateurish because anyone can make this mistake.
Yeah.
But it's easy to make the mistake of a game, and I've played a lot of them over my lifetime, where too much is given away too quickly, and then it's like, so now what?
Yeah, so now what?
Now I know what your big bad guy's doing. He approached me, he did a thing, and I mean, come on, now I have no motivation. It's like playing in those bad tabletop games where the DM, the GM do not know what they're doing, and in the first 2 episodes, the big bad guy reveals himself and taunts you like some WWE superstar heel.
Yep.
And then what?
What do you do?
Okay, so you've arrived, you've shown, haha, I've thrown back my cloak, here's my evil plan, now stop me. Well, but I don't feel the journey anymore.
And your level 1 characters are going, whoop.
Yeah, all the wind is taken out of the player's sail. Other way around.
And the other way around is, does this crumb make what's going on too vague and confusing?
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot in games. Even AAA games, where I was given a bit of information, and I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean? So I don't get it.
There's a huge difference between being subjectively vague and intentionally vague.
Yeah.
Subjectively vague means you're giving enough information that makes the player come to their own conclusions, but regardless of whether their conclusions are right or wrong about your subjectiveness, this vagueness, they can continue to play the game and succeed.
Right. They understand what it is that you said, but
what it means, what they can draw from it is subjective, and that's okay.
That's okay.
However, being intentionally vague just to be edgy and be like, oh, you don't know what's really going on. Oh, that's when you start to confuse and frustrate your player. And what does a confused, frustrated player do?
Puts down the controller, walks away.
Yeah. Sometimes never to come back.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another one, right?
Yeah.
Does your little crumb, does your point, etc., make them question your story's direction? That can be good.
You can actually use that to your advantage. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
It can be bad. It can be bad.
Absolutely.
For example, if they've been going through the whole story, thinking, oh, okay, it's just a standard quest to go stop the bad guy, but then suddenly they get a piece of information that makes them think maybe the bad guy's not the bad guy.
Yeah.
Ooh. That's good.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
A bad one is you're playing through a game and it's a mystery game. All right, you're solving this mystery and you're going through and finding clues. And then suddenly, boom, they learn something and now it's a horror game. It's survival horror.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what?
If you haven't
I didn't sign up for this.
Right. If you haven't been bit by bit giving them that it was going to go that route, and you just turn it on them, you're not being clever.
Yeah. So here's just an example on top of my head. You're in London, you're Sherlock Holmes, and you're solving this mystery. Then you enter this house because that's where you're supposed to go, right? And all of a sudden, it's Silent Hill, and you're in this other world, and you're running away from Pyramid Head.
Right. Assuming, of course, it's like you're halfway through the game. If it's in the first few minutes, then you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
But if you're doing your Sherlock Holmes, foggy London, and there's nothing to let you know that you're going to go suddenly into Lovecraftian horror, nothing.
Yeah.
Then that might not be a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
Okay.
No. Okay.
But then there's one that's always good, no matter what. Does it make them want to know what happens next?
Oh, yes. The hook. Keep hooking them. If
your story beat makes the player want to know what happens next, regardless of how it makes them feel. It can make them feel happy, uneasy, sad, angry, etc. Is it makes them wants to know what happens next, you did a good.
Yes, you did.
So you want to go for those. What's next?
Once you've done all that, and once you've done all your revision, okay, for that part of your story, go back and read how all the story pieces come out over the entire narrative.
Yeah.
Okay, you've done, yes, what I'm saying is you've done your revision for this part. Now, go back and read everything up to this point. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Does it feel fulfilling?
Right. Does it feel like it comes out at the right time? In other words, if you took a step back as a player and said, yeah, that felt like that come out at the right time, or, put yourself in the shoes of your players. And this, sometimes you do need external help. Beta testers are a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Proofreaders are a wonderful thing.
Proofreaders.
Dev editors are gold if you can find one that'll work at a reasonable price.
Dev editing.
Deals for sale right here.
I'm for sale. We'll put a little for sale sign on me.
Then you know you're good.
Yeah.
You know you're good. Does it feel like it makes an impact? A good strong
That's
impact.
very important. You want to make an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If all those answers are yes, then you're good. Now, what I'm always being told and what I'm always telling people when it comes to writing prose is read it out loud.
Yes.
And I say the same thing for dialogue, and I'll actually say the same thing here because over the more and more I read everything I write out loud, when I do that, I make very few errors and I catch a lot of the subjective, mistakes on impact, timing, pacing, etc.
Yes.
It's
a very good technique.
Even the notes for these podcasts, our forums, our content, if I don't go back and read out loud what I wrote, generally it can create errors that Teal and I stumble over.
Yeah.
But, and we do stumble, but if I actually sit back and read it out loud, I find that the vast majority of my mistakes are gone. So at this point, I tell everybody, if you've written it, if it's words, read it out loud.
Yeah.
That really fixes most of your problems. And by the way, it's okay to change everything we just talked about.
Yes.
All of it. So everything that we've just given you for the past 35, 40 minutes, it is okay to change how you approach it and how you execute it based on your vision as the developer.
That's why it's so important. I've said this in other broadcasts that we've had, is to, at the very beginning, write down your vision.
Yes.
Because that's your guiding light right there.
What game do you want to make? What story do you want to tell?
Yeah.
Then not only when you're self-revising, but other people are critiquing, you'll be able to know at what point to go, okay, let me not follow the methods that have been taught to me. Let me follow my gut.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the thing. If your gut ends up creating something that the player base doesn't like, they'll let you know.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can adjust next time your intuition. It's okay. But ultimately, you as a developer have to go, I really feel like this big reveal needs to be at this very moment.
Yeah, this predefined moment right here.
Even though everything that I've just done, you know, on an algorithmic level, on a mathematical level, tells me it should be later. You know, even if, you know, all the stuff I've been following from Studio Blue tells me that the big reveal should happen later on, my gut, my vision tells me right here at this point in my story. Follow your gut.
Follow that.
Because sooner or later, you're going to put that out in front of other people, and they're going to tell you how that made them feel.
Yeah.
And that's going to be your only true metric.
Again, I want to reiterate, this is an art.
Yes.
So art is very subjective, and it doesn't follow any mathematical algorithmic logic.
We can only teach you the skill set of how to analyze. We can't teach you how to art.
Yeah.
Start getting your questions ready, guys, by the way, because when it comes to it, at the end of the day, this is your story.
It is.
This is your vision.
It's your story, your vision.
And you got to feel your way through that narrative. You got to feel your way through each of those story beats, everything. You make sure that you're telling the story you want to tell. Otherwise...
Amen, brother.
Yeah. Don't sacrifice your vision for anything anyone says, no matter who they are.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's time for us to take questions from our live audience.
If you've been watching, remember to use the podcast question feature in our chat.
It is 50 channel points, which is 5 minutes of watching, and hopefully you have been watching just those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or more. While we're waiting to see if any questions show up, when you do your storytelling, Teal, because you've been getting into a lot of storytelling in tabletop, and when you do your storytelling, how do you like to measure out your beats? How do you like to measure out when you do a reveal?
I do it as like events. That's what I do. So whether it's a character does something or something happens in the world, I pace things by events. Okay. So, you know, in a tabletop setting, there's some element of kind of predicting what the players will do, but that's not a tried and true. That's not guaranteed. No. So what I do is I lead them into my situations. Okay. And the way through my breadcrumbs. Yeah. And that's how I pace myself. It's event, minor event, minor event, minor event, major event. Okay. Do you find, and this is just me asking a question I already know the answer to, but do you particularly like to have your beats come out in dialogues, cutscenes that the player's not a part of? In other words, do you feel most comfortable letting your story beats come out during character dialogue, during scenes that the characters witness, or during cutscenes that the characters don't witness but the player sees? I prefer dialogue. I prefer that interaction between GM and player. Yeah. I save my cutscenes for the larger crumbs. Okay, so we talked about larger but less pieces. That's what my cutscenes are. Right. And I'm kind of fluid as to whether it's a cutscene that the character sees. Right. So a scene unfolding, they're just witnessing. Right. I divide that up between that and a cutscene that only the player sees. And I generally reserve cutscenes that player only sees for major turns. Those major cinematics. Yes. Yeah. I save those. Those are few and far between. Right. Because in your GMing style, you like to let the player mold
the direction of sequences.
I do.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
We do have an AMA here.
Okay. Here we go. This is from Human.
Okay.
Can you elaborate more on the way plot twists fit into a good story? It seems easy to over-rely on them or do them poorly, and yet they seem to have a lot of potential for impact.
That is a very good question,
Yes.
Human. Thank you for it. So I could go and say, don't have more than 3 plot twists per story and give you some sort of mathematical equation. I would be talking out of my ass. A good plot twist is a very powerful story element.
Yeah.
When they are overused, they lose their impact.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's constant plot twists. Like, oh, the bad guy is really this, but oh, the story is really this. Oh, the more you try to be like M. Night Shyamalan in his later works, the more you're going to fall apart.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah, there's no quantifying it to anything. We talked about having multiple plot twists, too many plot twists, numb the person. And I think it comes down more to that, to look at what Human's saying, is if you're going to constantly do something like a plot twist or a big reveal or a shock or a turn being like a bad guy becoming a good guy or a good guy becoming a bad guy, then the player becomes absolutely desensitized to it. Like, seriously. Player's not going to know what to make of that. If you have like 5 plot twists over the course of a 2-hour game, what are you playing at that point? So to kind of go back to the core of Human's question, try to have your plot twists, if any, be infrequent, rare, and hyper impactful. Have it be so that the plot twist comes at the most climactic and what's the word? Inconvenient.
Yeah.
So have your plot twist come at the most climactic and inconvenient moment.
That sounds good.
For the character. So if you're going to have a plot twist on the hero, have the plot twist occur when it's going to cause them the most problems. Also consider having your plot twist when it's going to have the biggest shock impact on the player. That's the reason why The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable are so amazing. The twists come in the last few minutes of the movies.
Yeah.
There's no twist until then, and then when it hits, you're slapping yourself on the forehead going, holy shit. Now, the other part of Human's question is, it seems easy to over-rely on them or do them poorly. Do them poorly. That's a big one. We could probably talk about that for another 5-10 minutes easily.
Sure.
Doing a plot twist poorly is, giving nothing. There's no crumbs, no anything to the twist.
It just happens out of the blue.
Yeah, it just happens. Haha, look at me. Oh, what a twist. Look again, Sixth Sense, best example ever. You have crumbs the entire darn movie.
Yeah.
The whole movie, there's crumbs that Bruce Willis is dead. And then when you get to the twist at the end, wow, that's done really well. A bad twist would be if you got nothing. If he was interacting constantly with people, if they were interacting back and it wasn't just him and the kid, and then suddenly, oh, but he's really been dead the whole time, then that's poorly done.
Yeah, that is.
So to kind of summarize and answer to your question, Human, make them as infrequent and inconvenient to your story and inconvenient to your hero as possible, characters, and don't handle them poorly by making sure you have all your correct breadcrumbs and story beats leading up to it.
Yeah, okay. It's plausible. Okay, here's another podcast question. This is from KB on behalf of Human.
Okay.
How would your advice about story beats apply to very short games, like 10 to 45-minute games, like in game jams?
Exactly the same, except you're just shortening everything. Yeah,
it's just a shorter string.
Yeah, so instead of having like all this great division, you're maybe dividing your game into 2 chapters, 1 chapter, 3 chapters, and each chapter has 1 or 3 sections. But even if you have 1 chapter with 2 sections, where you have section 1 and section 2, there's still a story beat there.
Exactly.
The only time you would not really have a story beat is if you had 1 chapter, 1 section, and that's you starting your game, the character getting out of bed, and then a rock falling on the house and the character dying.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's
it. It's like new game, poof, game over. That would be hilarious. Don't do that, guys.
Don't do that.
let's see if we have any more questions. Anything on your end, honey?
No.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So we are going to wait and see if we have any other questions before we end our podcast for the day. This is, again, just to make sure you guys understand, this is not a science. This is not a science. There is a structure behind it. There's a method behind making it easy on you, but ultimately you have to follow the art. You have to follow your gut as a writer. You know, and don't be afraid to stand up for what you wrote and say, this is the story I'm trying to tell.
Yeah.
You know, if you get feedback from your player base and your critiquers and everyone saying, hey, this isn't working for me, try to find out why it's not working for them, and then adjust everything to work together.
Yeah.
Don't compromise your vision. Don't compromise what you, the artist, want to do. Just compromise how you present it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah, I think
don't see
so.
any more questions. If one last one comes in while we give the outro, we'll go ahead and answer it offline. I do want to thank everyone for listening. This is good. This is fun. This is a tough topic to hit. Because,
yeah, it is, because it is so subjective.
Yes. But just be sure to keep working on it, and eventually you will be story beating away.
Yes, you will.
Like a drummer on drums. So we want to thank everyone who was watching us live. You guys are a great audience. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for helping out Human there, KB. That's awesome of you. And we want to thank everyone who watches us on VOD, whether it be iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, etc., etc., etc.
Thank you.
Yeah. So join us next time for DLC Not Included. And remember,
anyone can give you the key, but you have to go through the door.